Oh hey, I'm now participating in an outreach program for vampires. The only problem is that instead of sucking blood, they keep on sucking dicks. Now, sucking blood is definitely much more worse, but sucking dicks is a totally different level. They didn't even specify that we would have gay vampires in the outreach program. Like, what am I supposed to do when they're out of control? Show them a burning pride flag?
Who doesn't love vampires? I know a large population of the Wattpad community backs me up on this, and I know the entire population of Transylvania says otherwise, but I love them. They're cool, they're scary, they're iconic. Vampires have been an interesting myth that has been explored for a while. I should know that because I explained the entire story of the novel while I was busy ignoring one of the worst games ever made. Upon looking back at what I did, I realized that I really should be playing a game about vampires instead of talking about a novel about vampires. What do I look like, a philosopher?
To know everything is to be nothing. You're not even in college. Future educational plans continue to bedevil me.
For the longest time, the concept of vampires has only been used in movies and novels. Eventually, a game surrounding vampires was made. Castlevania, also known as Akumajo Dracula in Japan, is an action platforming game developed and published by Konami. It was originally released in Japan for the Famicom in September 1986 before being ported to the NES in North America in 1987 and in Europe in 1988. This is one of the most iconic and best games you could play on the NES. But you know me, I didn't come here to play Castlevania because of how good it is. I want to play this game for how difficult it is. Most of the Castlevania games, specifically the classic NES titles, are known for being difficult. This goes for the platforming, enemies, and boss fights. These aren't like the later entries such as Symphony of the Night, which is a Metroidvania offering you a much easier playthrough. These are the real deal. Of course, since this is an NES game, it's no surprise that it is difficult, given the tight controls of most NES games here. So without further ado, let's play Castlevania.
It's time for Halloween! Don't come to my house or else I'll suck your dick!
So the game begins with Simon Belmont walking up to Dracula's front door to stop him from doing evil. Of course, you would never know that because the game itself doesn't tell you what you're doing unless you have the original copy of the game or that you have to search up this story online. Am I being too nitpicky for a story in an NES game after playing Ninja Gaiden which had entire cutscenes? Or was I? Here we have your standard NES platforming gameplay. You press the A button to jump and B button to attack, you move quite slow and the jumps here are a bit difficult to get used to. You can use your items by holding up on the D-pad and pressing B. Of course, each item does different stuff and you can get these items by destroying these candles. There are tons of candles here, but why does Dracula need so many? Isn't he the vampire? Don't vampires already have natural night vision? Most of the time, destroying these candles drops hearts. Now, in most games, a heart usually represents health, which can either give you more HP, restore your HP, or upgrade your health. In this game, however, hearts are basically your ammunition for items. So in technicality, hearts are anything but HP, which is really weird. Why not just use anything other than hearts? Why not a cross? That would make more sense given that this game is centered around a vampire and vampires have some connection to crosses, so why hearts? It doesn't make any sense. But what does regenerate your health in this game? Hidden behind some blocks, you can find food. Now it might look like a turkey leg, but in reality it's a pork chop. I'm not kidding. Maybe the Japanese just have a different concept of pork than in other countries. What I love about this game is the assortment of iconic monsters here. Zombies, bats, skeletons, hunchbacks, fishmen, the American eagle. Another great thing about this game is the setting, which is close to the iconic gothic style that we know of from the old Dracula films. But let's head back to the enemies here. Most of the enemies here get taken down with one hit, some with a few more hits, and others that take an entire nuke to take down.
Did I forget to mention that this game was insanely difficult?
The good thing is that your whip has a wide range, so you can kill enemies at a large distance. The problem is the cooldown for your next attack. It's not as fast as Ninja Gaiden, where every time you press the attack button, Ryu instantly attacks. You have to wait a little bit here when doing another attack. Another problem is the stairs. To go up or down the stairs, you have to press up or down on the D-pad respectively. This was really annoying to me because if there's an enemy approaching and I move up or down the stairs, I change the direction I'm facing, so I will always get hit. There are some areas where the stairs cut off on the bottom, so if you get hit near the stairs and fall down, you don't go back to the previous area, you die, which brings us to another issue in the game. Whenever you get hit, you get pushed back, and this is a major problem when you're in tight platforms. Basically, whenever you're close to an edge, it's automatic death. This is more annoying in the last stage of the game, where there is a giant pit everywhere and the enemies you encounter here are everywhere as well. I would put the Medusa heads as the third most annoying enemies in this game, but they're easily dealt with the right weapons and if you recognize their patterns. The Hunchbacks are the second most annoying enemies in the game. They move incredibly fast and jump around like maniacs. The only way to deal with them is by using holy water. Hunchbacks have to move slightly forward towards you before jumping, so if you use holy water, which leaves a small area of fire for a short time, they'll walk to their death. I'm sure some of the other items might work as well, but this is the most effective method that I've found. However, the most annoying enemy in this entire game has to go to the giant bats. The first boss is one bat, and even then trying to hit him is impossible without any items, so having not one but an entire swarm of them in the final stage of the game is insanity. That's not the only issue. As I said earlier, that entire stage has an entire pit everywhere, so if you get hit once, you're basically dead. I 100% guarantee that you will die every single time in that level. It's nearly impossible to survive this in one go. But speaking of the bat boss, let's head on over to the bosses. The second boss is a giant Medusa head, which is a lot easier in my opinion than the first boss, since she only has one attack and you can jump over her head easily. The third boss are two mummies. They barely do anything as is expected from a mummy, however they are pretty tanky, so this fight is not entirely easy. The next bosses are Frankenstein's monster and Igor. You want to take down Igor since he's a hunchback and he's the most annoying in this fight, so you always have to go for him first. After that, you just have to deal with Frankenstein's monster. Overall, it's a pretty simple fight. The next boss is... This guy summons sights around the area in the circle that can be pretty hard to deal with. They can easily be taken down with just one hit. Despite that, the sights can still respawn, so you want to try to position yourself to target most of the sights efficiently, while also trying to avoid getting too close to the Grim Reaper, but close enough that you can still hit him. Overall, I'd say this is my favorite fight in the entire game. It's a cool yet challenging fight. Finally, the final boss is none other than Dracula himself. Dracula has two phases. In the first phase, he throws fireballs and teleports around the arena. While that sounds simple enough on paper, you can't easily predict where Dracula might appear. Another thing that makes this fight difficult is that you have to hit his head specifically. Attacking his body doesn't damage his health. The fact that he's pretty tall makes it more of a challenge, so you have to jump and attack or use some items to hit his head. I'd say you're better off just jumping over his attacks and hitting his head. Do note that sometimes if you do attack his head, you don't actually hit him, so try to get the timing right and attack the moment you jump. For the second phase... What in the unholy name of ass is this fuckness? Is that a gargoyle? Is that Big Bird's abandoned cousin? What is that thing? Anyway, the same rule still applies. You just have to hit his head to kill him, but instead of teleporting, Dracula now jumps around, but he can still do the fire attack. The annoying thing about his jumps is that if you're too close to him, you'll get hit even if you're trying to dodge him, so you want to keep your distance so that he can jump high enough that you dodge him. Overall, Both phases are equally challenging, but this was still a fun fight. With that, we defeated Dracula and saved the day. What kind of name is Trans Fishers? Isn't it supposed to be Terrence Fisher, the director of the Hammer horror films? Now what is this? Bram Stoker? Shouldn't it be Bram Stoker, the author of the Dracula novel? Christopher B? This has to be some translation error. There's no way they let Bela Lugosi, Boris Karloff, Love Cheney Jr., Barbara Sherry, Mix Shreks, Love Cheney, Green Stranger, Bar Reed, Andre Morrill, Joan Candice, and Simon Belmondo.
I don't know if this is a huge translation error or an intentional joke. If it is a joke, it's a pretty lame joke. Like, changing names of other people is like peak humor at kindergarten. Like, who would put that in a video game? Hello? I changed my classmate's name in grade school to Bald McForehead. It's not my fault he's born bald and has a huge forehead. Whatever. This game, pretty difficult, but I hope that in the next game it doesn't involve any Reed son of a bitch.